live before a canned studio audience. It's Friday Night Movie Reviews, and here they are, Chris and Keith.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Keith.
I'm Chris.
And this is Friday Night Movie Reviews. We thank you for being with us tonight. We didn't go and see a movie this past weekend because there wasn't really a whole lot that was out that we wanted to see. But we did watch a couple of movies over the weekend that you can either stream them, or if you have them in your collection of Blu-ray or DVD, you can watch them there. So that's what we did. And the first movie that we're going to review tonight is Ghostbusters
Afterlife.
As
part of our double feature of Ghostbusters. So I'm guessing you probably know what the next one is after this.
So we actually do not like we don't like the surnames too much. We don't like the subtitle in the title. So what we actually do is we term this as Ghostbusters 3. And the reason we term it as Ghostbusters 3, we'll kind of get into it a little bit later. But what we want to do right now is just go over with you a little bit of the premise of the movie. Without kind of giving any spoilers away. We can give some away because these movies have been out for a while. And if you're going to see them, you've probably already seen them.
Yeah.
So Ghostbusters Afterlife, basically Ghostbusters 3. It takes place. It starts out and it shows. What later you know as Egon.
Yeah, and they kind of had to dance around this because by this point Harold Ramis had passed in real life before they were able to make a third film, and so they worked around it, and they found an actor that they could show from the side or the back that kind of resembled Harold Ramis, and they could do the deep fake if you absolutely had to see his face. And so it's implied that it's him, and it is. It's supposed to be his character at the beginning of the movie.
Right. And what happens is he is in a battle with a ghost. And it turns out that the ghost that he is in a battle with is one of the spirits from the first movie. He's actually battling the dog monsters.
Yeah, Zool and I can't remember the other one's name.
It's not Gozer.
Gozer's the main.
Yeah, Gozer is the main thing. But it's Zool and whichever one is, well, we'll just call him the gatekeeper and the keymaster.
Yeah.
So he has one of them in a trap, and the other one is chasing him down. And so that's the reason why he's being chased by this ghost. And what this movie actually does, this movie circles back around to the original Ghostbusters movie, the first one that ever came out. And what you're going to find in this movie, you're going to find that there's it's his family. It's his family that's actually coming in. He passes away. And then his family, his daughter, inherits his house, which everybody in the town calls the dirt farm.
The dirt farmer, because he doesn't actually grow anything. He's just always constantly working in his field. And
you'll find out, if you haven't seen the movie, you'll find out later why he's always working in his field.
So, this one's so deeply entrenched with the first movie, so you really needed to have seen the first one to really get it. But if you haven't, they explained it along the way because the kids have no idea who their grandfather was. They have no idea he was a Ghostbuster. So you can technically go into this one without seeing the other two, but it helps.
It helps a lot.
Because there's a lot of nods, a lot of nostalgia, like, hey, look at that, hey, that. There's a lot of that in this movie. This one falls into the legacy sequel territory. It falls into kind of a requel in a way. Not as bad as The Force Awakens, but it's definitely requel territory.
Right. It really is. It pays a lot of homage to the original, and even the second one. So if you haven't, like he said, if you haven't seen those two, you may want to go back because it will make a whole lot more sense, especially when the big bad guy comes out and everybody's acting like they've seen the big bad guy before. It's because they have. They've met Gozer before. They met him. They met it. It's neither a him or a he, or he or a she. They met it in the very first movie.
Yep.
So this movie does have a little language in it.
Yep. And it's just as similar to the language that was in the original too. So it's
Right.
kind of right on par. I mean, it's not really harsh like an R-rated language. This is like PG-13 language, so you kind of know what to expect.
Exactly.
It's not all over the place because how the first ones were more like a buddy group of people fighting ghosts. This one's more the family are dealing with ghosts.
Right.
So
Right.
it introduces that element. You have the young McKenna Grace playing Phoebe Spangler, and you have her older brother Trevor, who is Finn Wolfhard from Stranger Things.
And they're the ones that kind of take up the mantle. And they take it up gradually. They don't just go in, oh, hey, guess what? We're Ghostbusters now.
And suddenly I'm great at everything. So it
Right.
does avoid the Force Awakens issues where, Phoebe has to discover how this stuff works, and she slowly starts putting the pieces together,
Right.
like a well-established character should.
And she even begins to put together the pieces that Egon is her grandfather. She don't even realize it. She don't even know that. I mean, all she knows is that her mother didn't like her dad for some reason, and so that's what they've grown up with. So it does have a little language in it. Of course, it's like the first film. It does have violence in it, but it's more aimed towards the ghosts
Yep,
than
it
anything
is.
else.
And it does have innuendo jokes from here and there. They are in
Right.
there, but they're going to go over the heads of children because I remember watching the original ones and I didn't get the jokes. And
Right.
if I had seen this one as a child, it would have been the same way.
And there's no like adult scene sort of like in the original
one, yeah. So there's none of that. So you're not going to have as much of a cringe moment as you would have been if you were sitting there watching it with your young ones. If you do decide to watch it with them,
Right.
You're not going to have that cringe moment like in the first Ghostbuster with the Dan Aykroyd scene where he's supposed to be dreaming.
And it's not too creepy. It's
No.
kind of like the first film, where it's a lot of comedy and it's a lot of action, and I mean, it's ghosts. It does kind of get into some creep factor a little bit, but not too much. And it's not going to be too much for little ones to handle.
I will say this one has more drama in it versus
it does.
Where the first two are more about comedy. Like you actually have real adult situations between the characters actually being a family and going through these things because she has the Carrie Coon who plays the mother. She has issues with her dad Egon. That he was never around and all this stuff. She hates science.
Right.
And, there's a lot of that. There's a lot of real type stuff that the first two movies didn't really touch upon. This one kind of varies from it. So, you're always asking yourself, well, the first two are so close together. This one, they finally give you something different. We're not in New York City. We're out in Oklahoma. So you're out on a farm in this one. So no big cities, no big lights, none of that stuff. So it's a nice change of pace. So for all of the people always screaming, oh, they always just do the same over and over again. This movie does not do that.
It does. It has a whole different feel to it. And like Chris was saying, with the whole family element in it, it gives a lot more character development than the original did. And so you have that element as well. And the original characters do come back.
Oh, absolutely. And of course, the trailers spoil that because that's the hook to draw you back in that, the originals will be making an appearance in this film. And they do save it for the climax of the movie. So if you're expecting to see, all of the three remaining Ghostbusters and Janine all the way through the movie, you're going to be sorely disappointed.
Right.
But when they do show up, they make it count. Bill Murray's jokes are just as on point as they ever were. I just found myself chuckling every time the guy opened his mouth. I mean, it was just one of those things.
Yep.
So I guess now we're to the point where we said about as much as we can to get you to hook because without spoilers. So I guess we can talk about how we actually felt about the movie now.
Yeah. So Chris, why don't you go ahead and let everybody know how you felt about this movie?
Well, I appreciated it being different, and they had to for obvious reasons of dealing with Harold Ramis's death. There were characters in the movie I felt were stronger than others. They put Finn Wolfhard in this movie because his thing with Stranger Things and
Right.
them having the connection to Ghostbusters. But he was obviously one of the weakest characters in the movie for me. Like there was a couple one-liners here or there that would hit, but most of the time I'm like, I could have done without his character being in the
Right.
movie.
Right.
Like I would have been fine if Phoebe was the only grandchild of Egon, honestly.
And that's who they mostly focused
Focused
on
on.
was Phoebe.
Yeah. 'cause-
And it seemed to me like they focused more on podcast than
Yeah.
they did his character.
Yeah, and then they introduced Lucky, the love interest of Finn Wolfhard's character Trevor,
Right.
and she didn't land either. And I'm like, okay, so she's just a mechanism for her father being the sheriff in the town.
Right.
And I'm like, I could have done with either. They didn't. Those two characters were just not necessary for the movie.
Right.
Now I will say Paul Rudd. He's always a charmer. He's a good ad-libber. He was just born to be in Ghostbusters. So I really appreciated his character, and you're going to continue to see, even into the next film after this one, that his character will continue to grow. Like Paul Rudd's just got it, so I didn't have any issue as far as that goes. It's like, all right, so they're fighting Gozer again. That's my other issue with the movie. It's like, okay, this is where I was just praising them for doing something different, but they went back to the well and they just like, oh, we're just going to drag this back out again with Gozer, so we're going to go another ground with Gozer again. So I'm like, okay, but I understand it. It's supposed to be a link to the original because they're doing the requel route, which is fine. But I will say that that's one of my criticisms holding this movie back from being perfect like the original. I will say that even after a rewatch, I was still invested with all the characters. I wanted to know what happened to them. And, I still got misty-eyed at the end. Like, the climax does keep me misty-eyed. So because I really liked Harold Ramis. I love the character Egon. And I felt that this movie did its best to pay homage to him. And that I'll always hold in my heart. But I'll always watch the original two movies more than this one.
Right.
So I will say that as far as my ranking goes, this one's not going to be up there with these two. But by no means is this movie like a 4 or anything like that. So
how many Pepsis would you give it?
This one, because of the criticisms and everything, I was still, because they were still building at the time, and there's a lot of good things in the movie, but with the holdbacks, I'm still going to give this movie like a 7.5.
7.5. Okay, so I'm a little more I'm a little more lenient than Chris is with this movie, and part of the reason is because I'm not saying that he didn't enjoy the originals, but I went and saw the originals in the theaters. That's how old I am. And I really, really enjoyed the original movies. And for them to go back and for them to go back to Gozer, bring that character back in with the two dog characters and rehash that, to me it just circled back around to the original, and I enjoyed the nostalgia of it. And the reason why I enjoyed the nostalgia of it was because at the end of Ghostbusters, the original, you were just like, well, where'd Gozer go?
Yeah, they just blew up the building and they were just gone.
Blew up the building and Gozer was gone. It never really did explain where Gozer went. But this movie doesn't explain where Gozer went, so you're not going to get that. But it does bring Gozer back and gives a finality to it. And that's what I really enjoyed about it, was it gave a final big fight with Gozer that needed to be done. And I really enjoyed how they did it. I enjoyed how they went about it. I enjoyed that they brought the original characters back to help out with it. And that not only did the original characters help out with this, but the new characters that they brought in added to it. So I really enjoyed that aspect of it. And some of the things that he did say, some of the criticisms that he did have do stand. But I really enjoyed all of the nostalgia of it. Like him, I could have done without the older brother. I could have done without the girlfriend. That to me was just added fluff. And I guess they had to have 4, so it would have been pretty weird if they had didn't have 4 Ghostbusters.
Yeah, and that's where they were going for there.
So that I did enjoy it in that way, but
I will say this: they kept the music the same, which I appreciated.
They did.
The ghost looks like the ghost from the originals. All the sounds, lights and sounds were the same.
Yep.
So as far as like if you're wanting a consistent Ghostbuster universe, nothing has changed as far as that goes. And I would have been upset if the monsters looked too CGI.
Right.
Because obviously they went from using practical effects with the first two to using CGI in this one, but because they made the ghosts so cheesy in the original movies, it fit with when they changed them to CGI. So I didn't have a problem with that. So if you're wondering about the special effects, it's right on par with the other ones.
And they kind of kept some of that 80s cheese with it. So
I
it was
really
really
appreciated
cool.
that. Yeah.
It was really cool. And like I said, that just added to the nostalgia of it. Now, I will say this. If you didn't enjoy the first two, there is a chance that you may not enjoy these movies.
Yeah,
because these movies do have a lot of nostalgic purpose to it, and it does touch a lot on the original films. And so if you did not enjoy the first two, give these a chance, because these may be a little bit better to you, but you may not enjoy them because it does herald back to those original movies. But that's what I enjoyed about it. I love the nostalgia of it. So what I would give these movies, because I enjoyed the nostalgia so much, I would probably give Ghostbusters Afterlife probably an 8.5 popcorns.
Okay.
Because when we came out of the theater, I was excited about the movie.
Yeah, we both were. Yeah,
I really, really enjoyed it. We were both excited about it, talking about it, raving about it on the way home in the car. And it was, when I rewatched it on Blu-ray, it was about the same excitement.
Yeah, like you could see the potential, and that's something I had been wanting since I was a kid. Was where was Ghostbusters 3? All throughout the 90s, through the early 2000s, I'm like, okay, what's the holdup? And then when Harold Ramis died, I was like, okay, that's it. There's just not going to be one. And luckily, they found a way. Like I said, they worked around it, and this was a beautiful tribute to Harold Ramis. I think he would really appreciate what they did with the film.
I do too.
You had Jason Reitman, the son of Ivan Reitman, directing this. I will send. There is one spoiler. There's a mid-credit scene and an end-credit scene.
Right.
And so many people, when we were sitting there in Afterlife, did not stay for that final end-credit scene, and it was basically setting up the next one that we're about to review.
Exactly. So watch the end-credit scenes, and because they're there, and they really do set up a lot for the next film. So that's our cue to go. We enjoyed you being here with us tonight. Look, this was a good movie. Even if you didn't like the original two, go ahead and see if you can stream it, or if you have it in your collection or know somebody that does, pop it in that player and play it, because I think you'll like it.
Yep. Remember to like, share, subscribe. Remember to hit the bell for the notification for when our next video drops. Leave us a comment. What did you think of Ghostbusters Afterlife? What would you like to see in next sequels? We'd love to hear your criticisms of the film. Thank you.
Yes, please.